Okay, this is video 2 of your packet on slope. When we're talking about slopes of a graph, we're talking about the incline of the lines that you see. So at what rate are they going up or down? So we can talk about positive slope on a graph, or we can talk about negative slope on a graph. I like to think of positive slope as in climbing upstairs. So when you're reading from left to right on a graph, your line should be going upwards. Or negative slope as in sliding down a slide. So when you're reading from left to right, your line should be going down. Now when we're talking about slope, there's a line that can help us remember how to calculate it, and that's that you must rise before you can run. So in the morning, you must wake up, get out of bed, and rise, which would refer to our vertical change, before you can run to school or walk. And that would be our horizontal change. So yesterday we talked about rate of change as vertical over horizontal. We could say the same thing about our slope. So if we look at this in the context of a graph, I have one here with 3 points on it. To find the slope, we can talk about rise as our vertical change. So going here from -4 up to 2, we have to rise up 1, 2, 3 points. And we have to run 1, 2, 3, 4 points to get to 0, 2. So we rose 3 and we ran 4. That gives our line a slope of 3/4. We could do that again from point 0, 2 up to 4, 5, counting again 1, 2, 3 points on our rise over 1, 2, 3, 4 points in our run. That is one way to find the slope of a line using a graph. So remember, positive slope is like climbing stairs. It should go up when we read from left to right. And negative slope is like sliding down. And it should go down when we read a graph from left to right. And our line again is that you must rise before you can run, which means we can find the slope of our graph as rise over run. Another way to find slope is to use 2 points. So if we have 2 points, it would be like saying we have x1 and y1 over x2 and y2. Now yesterday we looked at a graph and we talked about the change from one point to the other on the y-axis. That's like saying from y2 to y1, and we took the difference. And then we looked at the change from x1 and x2 on our horizontal axis to find our rate of change. We can use this to make an equation to find slope as y2 minus y1, or the difference of our y values, over x2 minus x1. Let's use a graph to do an example of this. On our graph here, let's mark our point -3, 8 as our x1, y1, and use the point -1, 4 as our x2, y2. Using our equation, then, we can find the change in the y values over the change in x values. So here we said y2 is 4 minus y1, which is 8. That would be our rise in our graph. And then we could look at our x2, which we said is -1, minus our x1, which is -3. Remember, a negative minus a negative could also be written as a positive. So we could say 4 minus 8 over -1 plus 3. That would be the same thing. Now, if we do our computations, 4 minus 8 is, that's right, -4 over -1 plus 3, 2. If we simplify this, we could say that our graph has a slope of -2. Now, if we look at our graph, that would make sense because we said a negative slope should go down when we read it from left to right. Here, if we look at our line, as we go across from left to right, our graph goes down. Now remember, we could also look at the rise of a run on the graph if we have one. So on this one, if we started at our first point, rather than rising up, since it has a negative slope, we went down 1, 2, 3, 4 points, -4 over a run of 1 and 2 points. Either way would help you find the slope of a line using a graph. Now there are two special cases of slope. The first one is a horizontal line. Let's use our formula to help us find the slope of a horizontal line. Remember, we're looking at the change in y values. So 4 minus 4 over the change in x values. So let's say -5 minus 5. Now what's 4 minus 4? 0 over -5 minus 5. Yep, that equals -10. So we're saying this line has a slope of 0 over -10. Or we could just say it has a slope of 0. For all horizontal lines, we'll find that they have a 0 slope. What about if we had a vertical line? Let's try our formula again for this one. Remember, we're doing the change of our y values over the change of our x values. So in this case, we would say 6 minus -2 over 3 minus 3. So 6 minus -2, it's like saying 6 plus 2, that's 8, over 3 minus 3 equals 0. Remember what happens when we have 0 in the bottom of a fraction? That's right, we say that the fraction is undefined. In this case, any line that is vertical has an undefined slope, because you would get 0 in the bottom of the fraction. Let's try a couple practice problems. The first one says to find the slope of a line through the points -2, 1, and 6, 7. So that's saying that -2, 1 is our x1, y1, and 6, 7 is our x2, y2. Now remember, we said that we have to find the change in our y values, or our y2 minus y1. In this case, y2 is 7 minus y1 is 1 over the change in our x values. x2 is 6 minus -2, so we could say plus 2. If we simplify this, 7 minus 1 is 6, and 6 plus 2 is 8. The common factor for both of those is 2, so if we divide them to simplify our fraction, we get a slope of 3/4. Let's try our second problem. This says to find the slope of the line through the points 5, 6, and 3, 2. For this one, we'll use our equation again. We say y2 is 2 minus y1, which is 6, over our change in our x values, which is 3 minus 5. If we do this, 2 minus 6 equals -4 over 3 minus 5, which equals -2. Remember, when we have a negative on both sides of the fraction, we can say that it is positive. So 4 divided by 2 equals +2. That would be all for our slope video.